The Fujicast is an independent loading zone production.
Kev, I know it's not your favourite job, but you've been at the new studio, which I can't wait to see, by the way, making IKEA flat pack furniture. What you like with a flat pack, Kev? Not so good, then. How are all the bits in there, though, Kev?
Well, I've got approximately about 300 things left over after I finish.
That doesn't sound
Screws, good. Brackets, little bits of black things and stuff that's some plastic things and stuff.
I think you might find that what you need to do when you're making flat pack is to do it sober.
The Fujicast.
Then it might actually work for you. Have you tried actually putting this stuff together without the Heineken?
Oh, God. I'm just going to inject alcohol into my eyeballs to get through it all.
Oh, it'll all be worth it, though, when Bunker Malmesbury, because, of course, today we're talking to you in your house again, aren't we? That's why it sounds a little bit different. But when Bunker Malmesbury, with all its tech, is all working, it would have been worth all that hassle, Kev. It really would have been. You know that.
Yeah.
You don't sound convinced. In the old days, of course, Gemma would have been piecing this stuff together because she's like a whiz. It would have been done in half an hour.
Bless her. In fairness, she did come. She helped me as much as she possibly could until 11 o'clock, and then she proclaimed she was gone off for a hack on the horse.
On the horse? Oh, how is Star? Is she okay? Right, you and your questions today from our electronic mailbag, and of course also through the Fujicast private Facebook group. If you are not a Fujifilm shooter, do not worry, it's a big community, and whatever flavour you shoot, you're very welcome. Thank you to our friends who support us on Patreon, and we'll do some bump to the fronts in a moment. Kev's book of the week this week. What have you got, Kev?
Oh, I've got a really good book this week for all music lovers and for fans of photography. You're going to love it. I'm going to leave it until later, though.
All right. I'm not even going to tell us who it's by.
No. And it's one of those ones that's absolutely brilliant, but easily obtainable.
Right. Okay. And it's not going to cost you 7 IKEA flat pack sets.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All right.
And the fella what invented IKEA, he needs to be, honestly. I remember when I was a kid, my parents would say, we need to get a new wardrobe for your cupboard, for your bedroom. Yeah. And so we'd go down George Street Furnishers, we'd pick a wardrobe, and then a fella in a grey overall suit would turn up, and he'd stick it in the room, and then he'd go again. And now it comes like in 10,000 bits.
Kev, I thought I was older than you, but I think you're older than me.
Oh, I feel older than you. Well, I look older than you.
Since when did people turn up in a grey suit and just and deliver you make them sound like they're sort of shop steward gear? That's from the days when people when was it, Kev, that people in rugby used to wear used to wear the long workshop coats, didn't they? The brown coats. Do you remember those days?
Yeah, that was a very, very long time ago.
I mean, that's what you're making it sound like.
Yeah, but I don't understand. I was thinking about it today, when I was swearing and kicking the doors, that, why can't it be that you go to a shop, you pick the thing, and the man comes and sticks it in? Why have we become this world where it turns up on a lorry and in hundreds of bits, yet we pay a lot more for it? Something's gone wrong in the world.
I really
it's
don't.
All upside down.
I don't think if you were looking at eggs for eggs, apples for apples, or whatever the expression is, that your IKEA flat pack would cost more than what that man used to bring that wardrobe round for.
Oh, I don't know. You used to stick 50p in the back of the telly. Used to last a whole month.
God.
Netflix costs £10 a month now.
During the war. And I didn't mention who we have as an interview today. We have the wonderful Karah Mew, who we've been trying to get for a long, long time, but there's all sorts of reasons why she hasn't been able to talk to us, which you will find out in the interview. So that's what's coming up today. Right, we should start with a bump to the front. Have we got any new members that you want to mention, or are we going to...
We have got a few members, but I'm going to do that periodically.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I'm not doing it today because I haven't got the spreadsheet.
Is it in a flat pack somewhere?
Yeah, it's somewhere. It's somewhere in the studio.
So let's go straight for a bump to the front question. This one is from one of our patrons, Edward Hubbard, who doesn't live in Kev's cupboard. Hello, Kev. Hi, Neil. Question for the show. I've been following the rumours and the pending announcement of the 27mm with the aperture ring, all but set to pre-order. But then the call went out for a parent volunteer to serve as a team photographer for my kids' softball team. More or less the same time, the 70 to 300mm was also announced. So I'm deferring the 27mm for now, becoming a sports photographer with the 70 to 300. I know Kev's shot some sport in the past, and I'm looking for any guidance on settings. I assume that I'll be shooting aperture priority. I've not had much calling for shooting in bursts. Any recommendation for a setting that gives me reasonable chance of capturing a decisive shot of a catch or a slide home, but not so high that I blow my memory cards? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, burst mode that's what it's there for, really, for things like sports and stuff. So don't be afraid to use it. But of course, you need to kind of understand the game, I suppose, is the most important thing. And did you say handball? Was it handball?
No,
softball.
Softball.
Yeah. I don't really know that sport, but be prepared to know where the ball's going. Anticipate the action and then shoot. So watch. Brrr, watch. Brrr. That's probably the way to do it. And then in terms of using burst mode on the Fujifilm cameras, depends on which one you've got, but you've got choices of 11 frames per second. You can even go up to 30 frames per second if you use the sports mode, the sports finder mode on the X-T3, X-T4, X100V, that kind of thing. Continuous focus, pop it on continuous focus, pop it on CH. In your camera settings, you've got custom settings for the continuous focus, and one of them, the one that I find works best, is for kind of rapid sports that's back and forth and things like that. I've no idea which number it is, and I've no idea which settings of it is, but it's got a picture of a woman on skis.
Oh, so
that's the one.
Yeah,
and that's the one I typically would use for fast sports stuff. If I was photographing rugby or football or something, that's what I would be doing.
It's a lot of concentration, isn't it, when you're photographing a rugby or football match? I mean,
I used to love it. I used to go to Bristol. I had a press pass at Bristol Rugby, and this was when I was shooting my Canon years and years and years ago. And I used to go down there, and of course, you had all the proper press photographers, from the newspapers and Rugby World magazine and all that kind of stuff with their massive, huge lenses. And I would turn up with, I shot most of it on Canon had like a 90mm macro lens or something, or 85mm.
You mean the 100mm macro? I think
100, or was it 105? That rings a bell.
No, 100. Sigma do a 105 macro, but it's definitely 100.
It was either 100, 105, anyway, something like that. It was like a macro lens. And I just used to shoot everything on that because I didn't have to. I was doing it for myself. I wasn't producing images for anybody else.
Yeah.
And I used to love it because I would basically plant myself at the tri-line end rather than on the sides.
Yeah.
And I'd run up and down the tri-line, watching where the players were going. And then as they were hitting the tri-line, I'd be firing away. And I had a Canon 1D Mark IV at the time, so it was built for that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I used to get some great shots, and I used to shoot it all at f2, which I think was as wide open as that lens would go. So I would get, for every 25 pictures I'd take, I'd get 23 out of focus purely because of the nature of what was going on. But the one that was in focus was great, beautiful depth of field, a lot of action. I used to shoot it at like 12,800 ISO in the evening games. I loved that. Really enjoyed that.
You sound like you miss doing it. Why don't you do a bit more of it, Kev? With all this free time that you have, obviously.
All the time I've got.
Yeah.
Well,
and the fact that we're not playing sport at the moment, obviously, doesn't help a lot. But
no, I will. I think, it's because it's Saturdays, isn't it? And in the world, when the world starts spinning again, Saturdays typically.
Oh, yeah, weddings.
I'm at somebody else's wedding, but I used to love doing that. And softball, I don't know anything about softball, but I'm sure it's similar.
It's very bizarre this week. I had an email from a client in July saying, right, we need to have our little preparatory chat about what's going to go on the day. And I thought, what, wedding? A wedding? That was, because it's essentially been it'll be a year and March, April, May, June, July, a year and 4 months, won't it, really? I mean, I've done a few odds and bobs, but nothing like, the good old days during the war sort of days.
Yeah, I know. We got who knows? It's different all around the world as well. That's the thing. I was speaking to somebody in Germany yesterday who was saying that they seem to be a lot more cautious about things and a lot slower at releasing. Obviously, a lot slower in terms of vaccine and things like that as well. So I do hope that it's all back to normal pretty soon.
I do too. Ed had another question, actually. Also, any thoughts on which size focus points makes the best sense?
Focus point, well, that's quite tricky, actually, because the larger the focus point, the more chance you've got of getting the shot in focus. However, if there's lots of players bubbling around and, you don't want the camera to suddenly start tracking somebody who's running across the frame and is not in your intended subject. So the smaller one would be better. I would probably go 2 up from the smallest. There we go.
There was, while we're doing bump to the fronts, Lars Heggard said, "Hi Kev, hi Neil." I think it's "Hi Kev," and in brackets, "and Neil." Thanks for the extended show notes. Much appreciated. Curated content is always welcome as a source of inspiration. Great interview, he said, for you, Kev, this with the Godfather of Photography podcast. Nice to listen to a baryonyx at the end of the microphone for a change. Yeah, because I wouldn't imagine he's interviewed very often, is he, really?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. Although I did when I was doing some research, found a few things.
Oh, did you? Right, okay.
Yeah. And the extended, so for those that don't know, for the patrons, and I'm doing a extended show notes, which is effectively my travels around the internet during the previous week. So that's been quite well received.
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned about your travels around the internet. I was surprised you shared what you did, really, but there we go. No, I'm joking.
Some things I didn't share.
Okay, your question.
My question. Right, so we're going back to the Facebook group, where we have the lovely Facebook group. Lots of people putting lovely questions in. So much so that once again I find myself scrolling. Jason Renau. That's who we're going to pick. We're going to see in the not too distant future the Neil and Kevin Wedding Photo Documentary Academy. In other words, with distance learning having obviously established a new norm, it would establish a strong pool of documentary photographers with a sort of standardized methodology. Enjoying too much of a bottle of Romanian Cabernet Sauvignon.
Oh, that sounds nice. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Send some of that through.
Romanian wine, by the way, is very nice.
I don't think I've had Romanian wine.
It's very nice. Yeah, I've had it. Right. And interestingly, he spells it as Romanian with R-U-M.
Ah, a U instead of an O.
Yeah, well, I was having a conversation about this the other day, about Romania or Romania. What do you think it is?
It's Romania. Now, anyway.
Yes. It was formerly spelt Romania.
Yeah.
So Romania is, I think, people, I don't know, I suppose it's a little bit like if you come from Romania and then they suddenly change the name to Romania, you probably keep calling yourself Romanian.
Well, you're dead right, Kev. I've just looked it up. In English, the name of the country originally borrowed from the French Roumania, R-O-U, then evolved into Romania, as you said, R-U-M, and then after World War II, the name changed again, Romania, or 1975, actually. 1975, it officially changed. Goodness.
I only know this because I was talking to somebody the other day about it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I don't know where we were. Back to the question.
So is it the Neil and Kevin Wedding Photo Documentary Academy?
Funnily enough, we're going to Bucharest to do our first one.
That's right, yeah, Bucharest. Yeah, that's where I had a wonderful wedding booked in Bucharest, in Bucharest Cathedral.
Oh, wow, Kev, that's... do you know, that's where I did the... I'm not quite sure it's fashionable to mention his name these days, but the Michael Jackson concert, that was when I...
in the cathedral?
No, not in the cathedral, Kev, at the Bucharesti Stadium. But I went to all sorts of places like the cathedral. What an amazing place!
Yeah, well, COVID got that wedding.
Oh, okay.
So I never went.
That's a shame.
Yes. So the Kevin and Neil Documentary Academy. Well, we've various times talked about different bits and pieces, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've both got different things on the back burners, on the front burners, and on the side burners.
But we have talked about something over the last week, an idea that I put forward, which I don't know whether you're humouring me with your, I think that's a good idea, we'll get round to it answer. This is, ladies and gentlemen, this is like live questioning from me.
It's like a Facebook Messenger live chat.
It's a little bit like live chat now. I don't know whether you thought it was a good idea. Should I not be mentioning this now, or is it something we should really hold back and mention later?
No, it was a good idea, but don't mention it now.
Right, okay, yeah. So,
and also, by the way, as you probably know by now, if I think something's not a good idea, I normally just say, well... Yeah. However,
well, you didn't, because I did say to Sam the other night, I said, I've not heard from Kev on this idea that we've got about and she said, well, that's probably a good thing that he's not answered. I said, well, no, usually he either does one of two things. Funny enough, since you said, well, I don't know if I use the word well, he either says X or he just won't answer to the email, and that'll be like his reply.
That's me standing in the corner with my back to you.
Yeah, it is a little bit. But actually, he did come back and said it was a good idea, and so we will be doing it, I hope.
Yeah. So
the answer is to him, yes, there are a few things. And yes, there is a big thing next year, hopefully.
Yeah.
We in the olden days, during the war, we used to be able to plan things and say, we will do something on the 21st of whatever, February 2022, and it'll be there. And by the way, don't take that date that's not the date, but we'd be able to say that's what we're doing. But we can't these days.
Basically, we can't do anything. We can't plan anything until we get past the 21st of June, and they just say yes, go for it.
Well, I did get my.
Fuck your mum.
Pardon? I got my. That's not where you have your injection. I got my card today, my ID card for my vaccination job. I'm now able to go and do it, Kev. I was waiting for all this stuff to come through. All the eggs or the ducks are in a line, and I'm ready to go. Good. Let me at 'em.
I'm not even registered with a GP. I wonder if that means I won't get my letter.
Kev, you need to be... yeah, you do... yeah. Okay, you do vote.
It comes from the government. I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't been to the doctor since I was 15. I'm terrible.
Kev, good heavens. Yeah. Right. Let's have a...
Can I just come around your house? You can do it for me.
No, Kev, that's not the way it works. That's called the black market. We're not getting involved in that. Here is a question from Sasha Alexander. Kev, Neil, blah, blah, blah. Great podcast, blah, love it, blah. Listen from episode 1. Have a notebook full of tips and advice gained from listening to both you and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, question. During your early years as a wedding photographer, when you were just wedding photographer, so no podcasts, no other things going on, what did you do on a day-to-day basis to make your business work? What are the essential everyday work matters that need doing? The reason I ask is that becoming a photographer and having to be responsible for my income, I find myself more often than not thinking, what shall I do today? That's a very good question.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I suppose thinking about this question, I saw this question come in, and I did try and think back to, that whole process of why did we become wedding photographers, and that was generally because you wanted a better way of life, not necessarily more income, but a better way of life. And so I did find, I have to say, up until, I started doing training and all that kind of stuff, that I was pretty good. I would shoot the wedding on a Saturday. I don't typically edit weddings for a couple of weeks, even back in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't really do much during the week. And that was the whole point of it. That wasn't it. That was the reason why I'd given up all of the 9 to 5, so I didn't have to do anything.
I'm absolutely with you, because that's exactly what my week was like. I'd think, right, well, there would normally be a couple of wedding meetings, so I would chat with people. These are the days before Zoom or Skype, so it would generally be face-to-face at the studio that I had. But that wouldn't really fill up the week. I mean, it would be like a Tuesday and a Thursday for meetings. Then edits at home in the evenings with a glass of Romanian Cabernet, whatever that was, and that it was. Kev, what a great life! Why don't we go back to that?
Yeah, I think we should. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to just switch the computer off now. Is that all right?
That's the end of it.
It's taking up too much time. This stuff.
Yeah, well, the blooming training and YouTube films and Instagram, and God, that really screwed up our lives, Kev.
Well, actually, it was basically when we first started. I mean, you started a little bit before me, or a few years before me, in fact. But there was no social media.
No, there wasn't. No,
there was no Facebook when I started.
No.
There certainly wasn't any Instagram or anything like that, and nobody would think about doing YouTube and what have you. It was literally, you'd speak to people on the phone, or if they sent you an email and you needed to organise a meeting, then it would be face to face. And then, the social media thing came along, which is a good thing. It's not a negative thing, but that did change things dramatically, because then you suddenly had to start thinking, whoa, especially when Facebook first came along. It's like, right, how can I sell myself on Facebook? And so you're thinking about that. You're on Facebook, you're building business pages, and then you're thinking about SEO and linking things and marketing. And before all of that came along, it was basically a case of putting your feet up and waiting until the next Saturday.
Well, let's help Sasha here a little bit. So say we were setting up this business now and we weren't doing all the other things like training and podcasts and YouTube and so on and so forth. So say we were working solely as wedding photographers. What do you think your day would or should look like? Now, okay, notwithstanding pandemics, let's just cast all that out for a second. What do you think your day-to-day, your normal day-to-day would probably look like?
Well, really, the only thing that needs doing, if literally the only thing you're doing is photographing weddings, is marketing. And so, you might want to spend a little bit of time on your website and, and obviously the social media side of things. But really, I mean, if you genuinely asked a full-time working professional wedding photographer who, and I'm going to caveat this, who makes enough money from wedding photography to be their income. So it's not, they're not charging 400 quid for a wedding. They don't have a day job or anything like that. If they charge enough money, whatever that may be, if they charge enough money and they have enough weddings, then really there isn't much. Of course, you've got to do your website. You've got to get your marketing in place. You might do some schmoozing with venues and things like that. Some people, the high guys, and you used to do a bit of this. They would, take the venue, the wedding planners, take them for dinner and things like, all that kind of stuff you can do. But really, I find that, there's one of two trains of thoughts really going through my mind right now. You have the people who don't charge enough, and so they have to, they think, right, I have to get up today. I have to book more weddings because I'm not earning enough, and that's, that might be a consequence of them not charging enough. But then there's also the people who do charge enough, but can't see the woods for the trees in terms of lifestyle. And, they just want to, and this isn't everybody, of course, but they just want to book more. I need to book more. And then I can, I've got more money. And then I can tell people I've got more weddings.
Well, do you know that, but bizarrely,
and then my wife will leave me.
Yeah, but bizarrely, Kev, when I was shooting my enormous sort of, the few, I think it was about 3-4 years that I was doing 80 a year, easily plus. Now, that was the time I had a retoucher working for me pretty much full time. But actually, I had more time, more free time then than I ever do now, because that's because the business has branched into so many other things. And I think you'll find as a photographer, and I wonder whether going forward now that many people will be, and you made a very good point, whether many people will be able to be full-time wedding professional, wedding shooters only, because I doubt that, I don't know, is it fair to say that? I'm not sure that I could run solely a wedding photography business now.
I'm not so sure. I think that, yes, some people will struggle, and, I think that, it's you can't, none of us can see it now, because we don't know if the article in The Guardian is true. We're going to have a swinging 20s revival. And you know what happened after the swinging 20s? A lot of things going on that made people have to get married. So,
okay. I know I'm reading between the lines now, Kev. I think I know what you mean. There's going to be some stuff going on, isn't there, Donald?
Don't be rude.
I know you're still hanging in there. I can feel it. Right.
So nobody knows. Nobody knows what the future holds, and we only have to look at the last 18 months to see that's true. You know, somebody said on the Facebook group the other day that they'd only recently started listening to the podcast, and they started from episode 1.
Yeah.
And he's at something like episode, I don't know, 35 or something. And he said it's really interesting because, of course, we're talking about our business and where it's going and the amount of weddings and all that kind of stuff with no inclination of the brick wall we were about to run into.
I know,
no idea. And I thought that was really interesting because we don't know, you know, that brick wall, we appear to be climbing over it a little bit now. We might be just getting one of our little short stubby legs over the hill. But who knows? We might slip back down a bit, or we might go flying over it and fall into a lovely vat of Romanian wine, which would be bliss, you know. Nobody knows.
Now, this show comes out on Monday the 15th, doesn't it? Yes. What, you mean you're not actually doing it live on the 15th? No, you know that. But this, do you know what, Kev? This was the last week of normality before the extraordinary situation hit. This was what we're going into this week. We started the Monday and we thought, oh, it's just another week. Well, there's a little bit horrible going on here and there, and there's the, you know, people talking about this nasty. But by the end of the week, Kev, that was it.
Yeah, I know. All my mates were at Cheltenham. I didn't go.
Yeah. We didn't go, did we? Well, I was supposed to go, wasn't I, with you?
You were meant to come, that's right, yeah.
I think I was the first to pull out, I think.
Yeah, I didn't go in the end. I didn't want to risk it, but they went. And they didn't catch anything, but... No. Yeah, that was a year ago. We were talking about that the other day.
I know. Right. Okay. So back with your questions in a moment, and it's time for this week's guest, Karah Mew, whose documentary work as the glass narrator has been winning a lot of appreciative, admiring eyes of late, as you're about to find out. For me, though, Karah's draw is as much about, well, really the narrative of her as the client's work that she shoots and shows, because she has been able to weave it in such a way that you feel like you're part of her story. So we've been very keen to talk with Karah on the show for quite a while now. This is Karah Mew. Karah, we've been meaning to talk for a while, but despite everything else going on in the world, it's been a bit busy in your world, hasn't it? The last 2 years in particular, I think.
It has indeed, yeah. I think COVID has wiped a year out for everybody, but equally I've had a new baby, and it's just thrown everything a little bit up in the air. What
was it like having the new baby this time? Because we've got a couple of friends who've had babies, and we were kind of saying, I feel like they've not been able to do some of the stuff that we were able to do, like all the clubs and the singing and the dancing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's been really hard, actually. I've got quite a big age gap between my first and obviously my third, 11 years between them. Yeah. And obviously this baby is most definitely my last baby. So getting me through the pregnancy, which was really tough, I was really looking forward to socialising and really throwing myself into being a social mum and accessing all of these groups, which sadly in Nellie's lifetime, she's 17 months now, went into lockdown when she was 4 months. I went to one swimming lesson in that whole time. So it's been really weird. I'm definitely looking forward to coming out the other side.
Yeah, I think we all are, aren't we? You were very, very honest, by the way, particularly in your Instagram feed during the whole thing. It's something you believe in, and we're going to talk about that with regard to your photography, I know, but it's something you believe in, and you practice what you preach, don't you, really? Very
much. I think it's really important. When I first started my photography, I kind of merged lots of different things together, but mostly it was a communication thing for me, in the sense that sometimes it can be really challenging and difficult to communicate verbally on how you feel, where for me, I can visually communicate that on maybe a more multi-layer visual way to other people. And with regards to my pregnancy, my last one, it was a very, very challenging 9 months. I spent a lot of time either in hospital or in bed, and I shot an awful lot of images during that time because really I wasn't able to talk. No. I was so poorly that even just talking on the phone or even just talking to my husband was really, really difficult. So photography became a way of using my voice, but visually. So I shot an awful lot of self-portraiture work, and also like at home still life. I haven't released a lot of the work. I'm still kind of sitting on it at the moment. Yeah, I think you've got to be honest. And I could have easily put on a really lovely flowy maternity dress and showed my bump off in the beautiful sunset. But my pregnancy wasn't that. It was puking in an orange bucket. That is what I shot.
It was so honest. From your Facebook, I've been named as one of the 25 women in photography to follow this International Women's Day. That was by Fujifilm, UK. And then I saw, I've given myself a headache. The day before that, you've been voted one of the top 100 female photographers to watch for 2021. It's been a good couple of weeks, hasn't it?
I know. I'm gobsmacked, I think, because essentially I've had 2 years out. Found out I was pregnant with Nelly in January 2019. And then I kind of came out of hibernation for that and was due my first job on the 22nd of March, 2020, and that got pulled. So I've had 2 years back to back, really, being in the house. So I was gobsmacked, but obviously massively pleased. It was amazing, an amazing thing to wake up and see. That morning.
Your photographic journey starts with it. I mean, it's a lot of people blame their photographic journeys on parents, and yours is no different in that respect, because your dad was very into photography, and he, as you say, had a camera practically attached to his hip by the sound of it. But that's where you found the appreciation of this sort of more relaxed, very honest style that you have. Did he ever take the family to a studio?
Not that I ever remember. My mum might have. My dad still does take a lot of photographs now, and he was a massive photographer growing up. But it was actually my grandmother, so my dad's mum, who I would say has given me the most motivation to be a photographer, because she's 85 now and she still takes photographs at every single function. Every time she comes to my house, she's still got a camera. She still shoots on film. She is not a photographer at all. She has no concept of how to use a camera, but she photographed so much of my childhood in such an honest way that they are just priceless snippets into my life. So I remember when I first sort of bought my camera and I thought, what am I going to do? Am I going to work as a photographer? Am I going to just stay as a hobbyist? And I looked at other genres like most people do, and you play and you experiment. But I always got pulled back to the real life, the real messy, because I didn't want to fall into that trap of living in an Instagram world where we feel really pressurized to make beautiful pictures, when for me, it was the content and it was the subject matter and it was the chaos and the mess, which I know as a really emotional mother that I am going to miss when they're grown up. As much as I absolutely can go batshit crazy about toys all over the floor and paint on the walls and stuff, I know that I'm going to really miss it. So it's kind of my way to record it all, keep going, so it doesn't really die. Then I can always dip back into it and look at it. And I think that's really important. I am my ideal client in the sense that when I started looking at different genres to work in, I found that the easiest way for me to work in this professional practice is to be my ideal client and make the photos that I hang on my wall. That way, the clients that I do get we are like-minded. We are the same people, and it makes things very much easier. They pick the products or the images which I love, and they're easy to work with, and it's at ease. So one client that I had, I flew to Poland for 6 days on holiday, and I photographed her in her parents' house for 6 days on holiday, stayed with them and just shot them for all that time. And it was easy. I didn't have to pretend to be anything that I wasn't. There was good old family disagreements and there was noisy child, and I went along and had dinner with them. And it just means that if I shoot and I practice what I preach and my own work reflects my client work, it just means that it all aligns and there's no uncomfortableness either, which as a photographer is sometimes difficult to overcome.
I wouldn't imagine many people approach you expecting you to do anything other than what you show on your website and on the Instagram. But do you have to do any coaching at all? Where sometimes somebody might say, "Well, Karah, I like all that. Is there any chance we could do this?" And you're thinking, "Oh no, that's not down my line."
Do you know what? Yeah, I will do it. If I turn up and I shoot a family and they say to me, "Oh, do you know what? Can I get like a portrait, like me with like the grandparents?" I'm going to say yeah as well, because I think that there is. I wouldn't say that I was hardcore documentary, I definitely shoot in a documentary approach. I definitely don't go for pretty. I wouldn't tell someone to change their outfit to complement the outdoors colours and stuff like that. No. But if someone's going to come to me and like on a shoot and say, oh, can I get a picture of me and my son together? I'm going to say yeah, because I think when we look at family albums, we have that wonderful mix of different imagery. Yeah. So I've got the photographs of me all stuffy and in like nice outfits as a child with my siblings. And I love them equally as much as I love the chaos snapshots. I think they can fit together. And a big part of my work is environmental portraiture. I absolutely love taking portraits of people and mostly of my children. Yeah. And so I'm not going to be afraid at that moment to say, oh, Toby, can you maybe just move a little bit to the left? In that moment, if I am working on a portrait for him, but if there's a big, busy scene, I'm not going to start saying, hey, stop, guys, stop. Can you move to the left? Can you move to the right? But I think there's a happy medium. You say that people wouldn't contact me for other work. I've had a lot of people contact me for studio work, portrait work, mini cake smashes. I mean, I'm the least person that's ever going to do a cake smash. But you do get people that reach out and ask you to do this stuff. Yeah. That's going to be a no, because, I mean, I haven't got a clue on that kind of thing. I
think you'd be very good at cake smashes, actually. I think there'd be a Karah Mew way of doing them, but they wouldn't look like the ones that are done in studios, I'm sure.
They would be really, really messy, wouldn't they?
They would be. But it's interesting what you say about the sort of the mixture of styles and pictures, because we've had this conversation before where we look at, you get the school photos back and they're always against the blue background. There's nothing particularly clever about them. It's the same thing year after year after year. And then we got a company trying to do really creative stuff. And we thought, what's happened to all those pictures that are just the same old background where every year you see your child get just that little bit older in that very cliche photograph? Because some of those pictures are really quite important, aren't they? To be
they are. When you've got a mum like me who pays your daughter 20 quid to put the funniest face she can do. I actually did that. I paid my daughter £20 and she stuck her chin to her chest and gave herself a huge double chin. And honestly, it's like the best picture in the world. I feel awful because obviously the photographer must have had the worst 10 minutes with her ever.
Well, that's mean. And that's your humour, I think.
See, I love school photos. I always buy them because they are part of our social history.
Absolutely.
And they are part of growing up, and they're part of really just concentrating, looking at their face at school. I love that messy collar of school dinners down them, and you send them in with nice plaited hair and they come out look like they've been dragged through a bush. And I love the way that grandparents always put them on the wall. So I love all genres of photographs, and I think that the important part is, I think in today's world, is making sure that we include all parts. So it's okay to have those really beautiful stylized maternity images, and it's totally okay to go to a studio and have some really glamorous boudoir, but you've got to make sure that you're leveling it out in your personal albums at home with the honest you, and making sure that you are showing your house as it is, and spots on your skin and unwashed hair, because I think we are at a generation where we potentially could lose the real us. And I don't want my children to get to a stage when maybe I'm no longer here and they can't open a photo album and see what their mum really looked like. And that's really important to me. I just really want to represent and visually capture my family truthfully.
What do you say to a family? Because freedom's so important in the way you work. Do you give them any guidance at all, or do you just say, get on with it?
Bit of both. I know that when I first started, people would cover their face and not want the camera around. And lots of people ask, oh, how do you get over that? My family don't want to be photographed. And I would never photograph anybody in an exploitive way. No. I'm not going to make images which are unsensitive to anybody that I love, especially clients. And equally, like I said, I probably only share 10% of my work on social media. So the images that I make aren't going anywhere. They're staying in the family. And it took it probably took my immediate family about 6 months of getting used to me wearing my camera like a necklace, and it just came everywhere with me. So now it's become extremely normal for me to shoot my family, and it's extremely normal for me to just grab my camera out and take a photo, and equally for me to say to like my daughter, oh, Phoebes, can I take a picture of you? You look lovely there. Yeah. And she 9 times out of 10 says yeah, because at the moment she's 12, but she really loves the pictures that I make of her, which honestly makes me feel burst with pride, because I guess in a way she can see, I guess, how much I love her through the pictures that I make of her.
That's a beautiful sentiment. It really is. Do you, it's a difficult question, this, because we've been living this odd world for a year. But would you limit yourself to the amount of work that you want to do in a year, notwithstanding pandemics?
Yeah, I do anyway, I think. So prior to pregnancy from hell and COVID, that was my first year of business. 2018 was my first year of working as a photographer. And I would say that I was fully booked that year because I don't overshoot in the sense that I can't put in 2, 3, 4 clients a week. It's too much. I think because I give so much of me during a shoot and I shoot for so long, I would just emotionally, I think, burn out. So for me, I would say 2 shoots a month is good for me, because as much as I'm really hyperactive and bouncy, I need that time to sort of recoup and go back over the images and sit with them for a while. And I feel like if I was shooting maybe 2 families, 3 families a week, I don't think I'd be able to cope with that either.
We do need to talk about the kit. I mean, you mention it, and the fact that you've always got the camera never more than a couple of feet away from you, I would imagine. No,
I'm looking at it. I can see it right now.
I did see you peering that way, just to check it was there. What do you use?
So I shoot an awful lot of my work on the X100F. Mm-hmm. I love that camera. It's just, I started off with the X100, and then I quickly sold that and moved on to the X100S, which I probably used for about a year. Absolutely fell in love with it. And then I didn't quickly sell it. I really loved that camera so much, but I upgraded it to the F, and I have no loyalty, I don't think, because I think if I sniffed BV, I would leave the F. But I just love everything about how compact it is. There's no changing of lenses, so you can't get hung up on what you're going to shoot on. It's small enough to fit in your pocket. It's a little power horse. And what I love the most about it is that it isn't big and it doesn't really feel much more than a phone. And I will shoot clients on it. I don't have any qualms of shooting on that other than my main body. So I tend to reach for that an awful lot. But I also have the XT2.
Is that the main body?
That is what I use as my main body, as the XT2. Obviously, 2019 threw a curveball for me in the sense that I was due to upgrade. But I'm not the sort of person who is always pining for the next camera. I'm quite happy with what I shoot on, and the 16mm doesn't ever come off of the main body. That is just there's something special about that lens, and I love it. I'll use it for everything. I'll use it for wide shots, I'll use it for portraiture, an absolute mix.
So the 16mm is on the XT2, and then of course it's a 23mm on the X100. And they're your 2 focal lengths. So you work quite close and quite wide, don't you? Really, for everything you do. Everything.
I wouldn't be able to, especially with the family client work that I have in the past taken on. It would never work if I was far away, because I think the thing about shooting the way that I do is that I need to be part of the family. I've always said, like, people describe which is absolutely fine, but people describe their way of working as a fly on the wall. I am 100% a flea on the dog. I am in there. I am right in the middle. Like, if there is like something going down, I'm right in the middle of that. And I think that that's a really important way for me to work, especially with the kids. You come in the house and I dress a bit like a TV kids presenter, so I'm a magnet for children anyway. And you've got this camera and you're really exciting. There's no way that I'm going to be able to work in the corner of the room and they get on with their life. It's not going to work. So I always prep the clients and say, call me your friend. and I'm going to come round for a coffee. So my sessions, because I probably shoot for between 4 and 6 hours, the first hour, I would say, is just a warm-up. So I will go in. If I'm shooting in someone's house, I always wear my slippers. So I just have a coffee with them, get to know them, play with the kids, so they're instantly at ease. And I shoot, close, really close and personal. And kids are amazing in the sense that they might become really obsessed with the camera, but give it an hour, they soon forget. And it's the same with tantrums and parents. As a parent, you can only keep up that, oh, don't do that, and be happy. And then all of a sudden it's gone, and then you've got the tears, and then you've got the shouting, and that's when the magic happens. And that's when I want to be in the middle of it. I don't really have any, I don't ever feel awkward about being in the middle of someone else's family, because I guess, like I said before, they are my ideal clients, and we kind of mirror each other. So it feels quite normal and natural to be as one.
I really want to talk about your writing. It's a big part of you. I love the spoken word and the written word. So instantly I was drawn to it when I looked at your... Well, I'm going to talk about Instagram, actually, because I was looking at your feed, and there's the striking picture of a father, which is your husband, and your very, very blue-eyed son.
Yes.
Your husband looks to be fast asleep. I don't know whether that was... I don't know what the story was with the picture, but I know you know the picture I'm talking about, probably. But
I do.
I want to read the words. For I could shout in the bathroom where it bounces and tenderly whisper in their ears whilst I hold them against me. And although I know they all know, I compliment my spoken affirmations with photos. My I love yous are poured into every frame I take. Deep within the rectangles is everything I adore and more, just as you are. Please don't change your pose or clothes, your ways or front, just as you are. For if I ever lose my voice, I can rely on my eyes to write our love letters. That is, frankly, beautiful. I mean, it's... I would imagine that on your Instagram grid, people must be drawn to these very carer moments, I'm going to call them.
Maybe, yeah. I just talk from the heart. You do, I guess. Yeah. And that is, I can't be anything else. I've just got to be honest. And but the way that I kind of fell into photography was a strange one. So I worked as an illustrator after my little boy was born. Yeah. So I graduated in 2006 with a fine art degree. So I've come from a fine art background. Okay. And I had a little bit of time out to have children, lost my creative way completely, as lots of parents do. And then I started to work again and worked as an illustrator for 2 years. And it didn't really do it for me, because even though I was making visual pieces, I wanted to do the writing as well. Yeah. And I found that really difficult. So I did that. I saw it out, saw the project out. I was proud of it, the work. And then I moved on, and I ended up crazy going online, and I found that there was an oral storytelling weekend retreat. Right. And I was like, okay, that's got my name on it, I'm doing that. Yeah. And I thought it was in Brighton, and I ended up finding out when I got there that it was Tunbridge Wells. Right. Okay. I mean, this is a total carer moment. And turned up with my bags, and I hadn't even booked the room, which I thought I booked. So that was the story, like, to start the weekend off. Yeah. I thought I was going to have to sleep under a tree or something for the weekend. And I kind of feel like it was a massive game changer for me, because I am a talker, and I like to talk, and I like to write, and I like to express myself verbally, and I'm not shy about talking either. I'm quite honest. I'm a very honest person. So it was in this, like, a wonderful, like, hut, and we had to wear, like, slippers, and there was no booze on campus, and we had to be in bed by 9 o'clock, and it was just, like, massively, like, creatively bubbling. And I went on to work for that year as an oral storyteller. So I got a couple of contracts and did kids' stories and worked with my local dockyard and did, like, some puppet stuff, but I missed not making the pictures. Yeah. So for me, I remember thinking, do you know, I've worked as an illustrator and I've made the pictures, but I missed the text and I missed the stories. And then I've worked as an oral storyteller, but then I've missed making the pictures. And that's really how The Glass Narrator was born. It was a merge of both. I'm able to make the pictures and write about the pictures and use the spoken word and use text to complement them, but also They can be standalone as well. So I can write a blog and not have to include hundreds of photos, or I can share a photo on Instagram and not have to share any text. And I really like that. I like that freedom of being able to say, do you know what, I've got loads to say. I'm going to write this, I'm going to share this, or just let other people have a look at the pictures themselves and make their minds up.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to look at your Insta feed, because it does feel like a masterclass in showing the genuine and real side of Karah Mew. It's not all Insta awesome and perfect, and it's refreshingly authentic. Not for everyone, of course, Karah, but for your genre, for what you do, who you are, I do think it fits well. Does it come naturally to show people the you and not just pretty pictures of clients like a lot of us use that grid for?
I think it's scary showing yourself. I think it can be really scary. I think it can be daunting as well to put yourself out there on that platform, because as photographers, when we share our work, we're kind of sharing a part of us, like a wedge of our flesh. And if someone says something like negative about our picture, it's kind of like a negative thing about us. And when we've got us in the picture and it's a negative comment, that's all about us. I don't actually share a lot of client work on Instagram, purely for the fact is that most of my clients don't want me sharing their work. I find that extremely difficult as a photographer, because we do rely on clients being able to say, yeah, sure, share my work. But I think the nature of the work that I do record and the way that I think that people look in my pictures, maybe they aren't picture perfect. And also there's very, very personal moments in regards to maybe nudity and emotion and stuff like that. They don't want to be shared. And as much as I do get frustrated with that, I totally understand it. And I'm totally okay with that. So I do share a lot of my own work that I make on there. And I've kind of do a lot of self-portraits as well, because my husband is not a photographer. I have like hardly no photographs of me because I've got my head cut off, or I've got no limbs, or they're blurry. So I had to make that conscious decision that if I was going to be present in my family albums, I had to take the picture. And we are all capable of doing this. We all have cameras that have got timers. I know, like with the Fuji, we can use the app, so we can like put it on, use our phone as the shutter to control the shutter. We've got the power to do it, but it's scary. The thought of taking a self-portrait for many is terrifying. And now for me, it's become a really normal, natural part of my professional practice to make sure that I am included in my photo albums, because I don't want to be that invisible mother. I don't want to be the mother who says, oh, don't take a photograph of me. I'm like, I'm too fat, or I look awful. I'm taking all of them pictures. So I've got photographs of me standing in my pants in the hallway 3 days after giving birth. And honestly, I look like I've just fallen down the stairs. But I love that picture because that's what I looked like at that time. And I never was worried about what I looked like because I was happy. I had a baby, and I look back at it now and all I see is like the love that I was looking at my newborn. But maybe if I had looked at that picture the same day I edited it, I might have discarded it for the way that I looked. And I think that it's so important to make honest pictures of you, sit on them, put them in the photo album, because I don't know anybody that will look at a picture of themselves 10 years time and hate it, because you don't. Because you always look back and think, oh, God, I wasn't that fat, was I? Or, blimey, don't I look old now? Because you look back and you think to yourself, yeah, that was me. And I think I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of who I am as a mother. And I'm always, I don't give a shit about what I look like, to be honest, most of the time, because the people around me don't give a shit what I look like. And they love me. And I just think, well, I'm going to stick my face in the album and they can look at me forevermore. Thanks
to Karah Mew, whose approach to family doc work and the fine line between showing that and sharing her own family stories is so strong. And you know what? If there were ever a quote of the month akin to a goal of the month you might get on Match of the Day, it would be, I'm not so much the fly on the wall, but the flea on the dog, in terms of getting in there and being amongst it when she's making her pictures. Karah's going to return, actually, on the new Photography Daily business episode, coming soon in April, where we're going to dive even further into the way she works and hear some more of her stories. Today, over on Photography Daily, right after you've listened to this show, we're starting the week talking about travelling and making books from your travels. Right, before we go into questions, Kev, Instagram.
More importantly, print swap.
Oh yes, print swap. Well, that's what I meant by Instagram. That's what we're doing. We're doing it through Instagram, aren't we?
We are indeed. Instagram print swap. That's what we're going to do. Hashtag Fujicast print swap.
Yep.
You've got to be in it to win it. And the idea is that I am going to curate the people that put their pictures on there, because somebody did mention to me, well, what happens if, it's Europe and the UK and postage and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to try and pool people. So Europe with Europe, America with America, UK with UK, etc.
Perfect.
And at the moment, I think that's going to be really easy because we've only got 5.
So
hashtag Fujicast print swap. Put your picture on there, and then in a certain amount of time that I feel like we've got enough, I will then figure it all out and we'll do a print swap. I think it'll be lovely.
It's a slow burner, as they call it, Kev.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. Right, let's go for your questions. Kev, yours.
Okay, this is from David Harrison. Very simple question. He says, does APSC have a future with Fujifilm?
Well, yes. Isn't that the answer?
that would have been my answer as well, yeah. Yes, I think.
Every time this question is asked of Andreas, I see his eyes wander up to the ceiling, just that tiny few millimeters more than they did the previous time.
Yeah, I think, in fairness though, I think a lot of people, given the GFX stuff, a lot of people have, thought, well, where's the investment? But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think you only have to look at the XT4, what was the other one they did? The XS110. The one that came out just before the XT4.
You're the ambassador, Kev.
I know, but I don't have that camera, and I know that that's flying off the shelf. So there's a huge. I think it's interesting because a lot of people over the years, they would say, why aren't Fujifilm in the full frame marketplace? I want a full frame Fujifilm camera, and they very rightly many times said, well, we just don't think that we can fit in that marketplace. It's too saturated. You've got millions of other camera manufacturers in there, and we're concentrating on what we do best.
Yeah.
And they did it in the short 11 years they've been doing it, and then they went right. And after that, we're going medium format or whatever. I'll get abused for calling it medium format, but I'm going to call it medium format. Big sensors. So they're doing that as well. But yeah, APS-C is absolutely, in my mind, the future.
Well, the other thing is, it always comes down to lens and lens size, doesn't it? I mean, they've worked so hard on this lens roadmap, and you've got a spectrum of lenses there. I've just looked in the cupboard here. Hold on, let me get 2 lenses out. Obviously, your 35mm and a full frame. Do you want this one, or do you want this one? Okay, one of them weighs half what the other one is. It all comes down to size, weight, the whole reason that you buy into this system. That's a lot to do with it, isn't it, Kev?
Yeah, of course. And but you can take the argument further and say, well, then you've got micro four thirds, you've got 1-inch sensors, you've got kind of phones, camera phones with the tiny sensors. Yeah, absolutely. The smaller the sensor, the smaller the lens is needed generally. Yeah. And so you've got choices. But I think Fujifilm have nailed their flags to that APS-C wall, and will continue for sure. I saw on the rumor sites this week something about XH2. Now, hand on heart, I have absolutely no idea. The rumor sites know far more than I do.
That's the one I want.
But if the rumor sites are to be believed, it's a 2022 camera. 2022, yeah, 2022, the year 2022. That's insane, isn't it? The year 2022. And so that's, that's what's that? 10 months away still, and until we hit that year. So, I think there's good things to come. APS-C. I'm excited by APS-C. I think I do like my GFX system. I do love it, and I would love to see the leaps and bounds they made with APS-C, go forward into the large sensor marketplace. But there's a physics thing involved, and the smaller the sensor, the smaller the lenses, as we just said. So yeah.
Here's one from Kevin Beecham. Hello to both of you. Thank you for the podcast. I listen to every week. I'd be hugely grateful if you could answer this question, which I'm hoping is not another wishful thought that my aging tech won't do modern things. When trying to capture a highlight in deep shallow image, I can't find zebras or blinkies on my camera to indicate overexposed highlights. I have the histogram and I can identify a clipped highlight and see a live view on the EVF, but wonder how accurate they both are in JPEG. Thanks and yada yada from Kevin Beecham. Oh, he's not far down the road from you. He's in Gloucestershire.
No, I'm trying to get my head around that question.
Hang on. It's a Fujifilm X100S. Which does change the question a bit, doesn't it?
It does. Because I wrote a book about that camera, so I know the most things about it than everybody in the entire world. So zebras, definitely not. Zebras also is a filming thing. You won't see zebras on any of the cameras, unless it's the filming thing. So the zebras are the little kind of flashing lines and stuff, or
to show you got you're overexposing.
You're overexposed, while filming. The blinkies, the exposure highlight stuff is in the newer cameras. Although I don't know whether. Does it show you that when you're shooting, or does it only show you on playback? I don't know, because I never ever switch that on. I never ever do.
I've got a feeling it shows you as you're lining up for the shot, Kev.
Might do.
Yeah. But I've never used it.
Makes sense. Makes sense, but yes, I'm fairly sure not in the X100S though. No, because that's a few years old now. So the answer, Kevin, is get an X100V.
That's it. Enjoy your trip to the X100V shop. Have you got time for another question, or should we? Let's go for a book, Kev. Right, book of the week, because you were being all very secretive about it right at the start. Are you opening another beer?
I am, but I did it under the table. I did try.
It made no difference. I did try. I just heard it.
I did try. I tried my best. All right, so book of the week this week is huge, and I always say that, but this is huger than the last huge one we had, and it possibly, definitely in my top 5 favourite photographers. Another Anton Corbijn book, and this is called 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
For those of you that don't know Anton Corbijn, he's an extremely famous photographer who does a lot of music. So he's shot everybody from INXS, U2, Depeche Mode, Kurt Cobain and his crew. Well, just the who's who. He's also turned into a pretty spectacular film director, actually. But he's mostly known for his music photography, I suppose. Now, this book, we've talked about Anton Corbijn stuff before on some of the books. Yeah. It's basically a conglomeration of some of the outtakes and some of his more famous pictures, but it's unlike most of his other works or his other books. It's everybody. It's literally everybody. He's just kind of selected loads of pictures. So I'm just scanning as I look now. We've got literally my favourite singer of all time, Johnny Cash.
Oh, Johnny Cash!
1993.
Wow.
With his legendary guitar in Los Angeles. I'm going to flick. I can't do Patreon because there are none. We've got Nirvana, Los Angeles, 1993. Now these are often, so the pictures are. He's got an incredible ability to get candid pictures around the official kind of album covers and promo shots, and that's partly because he gets to know these people really, really well. And if you ever, there's a wonderful documentary about Anton Corbijn. It was on Amazon Prime, and he's such a real introvert.
Is he?
Yeah, absolutely. But incredible. The way he gets his pictures are just incredible. So we've got Nirvana there. I'm flipping like 50 pages up front.
Have you ever seen a film of him working with people then? If you say such an introvert, and I'm looking at some of the pictures here, such as, pictures with Morrissey and U2 and
so him and Morrissey
Jagger and
perfect.
Maybe that's the wrong one to choose, but usually music photographers they can't be introverted because they're in this just weird world.
True, I agree, but I think the reason why he gets these gigs is because he's not like everybody else. He doesn't turn up with all the fanfare and everything. He just turns up in his coat and his little camera and just does his thing. He treats people like they are like just regular folk, because in many respects he's as famous as many of these people. I mean, he's directing huge feature films. He did The American with George Clooney. He did the Joy Division documentary, which was all movie, which was all in black and white. It was wonderful, and he was the director of that. And Joy Division, if you read his biography, was his kind of defining introduction to kind of music, and that explains the man really. Because I love Joy Division also, but it's a certain personality, I suppose, that kind of follows that type of music. So, I got Bruce Springsteen. So I'm gonna flick through 10 pages and I'm gonna read out the names: Bruce Springsteen, Sting, Susie and the Banshees, or Susie from Susie and the Banshees, Bono, loads of U2 stuff, loads. The Kate Brothers. And we got
Johnny Rotten,
Bjork. That picture of Bjork in London. She sat on a tube, and it's very quiet. She's probably going shh.
Very good, Kev. Very good.
But it's beautiful. I mean, amazing light. Who knows whether they commissioned this tube or whether this tube train, or whether it is actually. I just wouldn't be surprised if they just, he just said to her, "Come on, let's get on the tube."
I love. There's I don't know if it's in the.
Black Arrow.
Yeah, it is in the book. You've got John Lydon looking over his shoulder in front of the New Yorker building, back at Anton. And that kind of like, what the f*** are you looking at? Kind of, but a very authentic picture. And I suppose that you're right. If you don't turn up with a pomp and ceremony of 1,000 lights and a million hairstylists and fashion stylists, then I suppose that's what they like about him, isn't it?
I look at Anton Corbijn's work all of the time and think, well, there's hope. There's hope for everybody in the commercial world, because it's almost all natural light. And I'm looking at this picture here, Metallica, San Francisco, 1996. It's just the light and the shadow, and the understanding of that is what he's so good at. But then the personality really comes out, the personality, and it's just not staged. That there's that very famous, I mean, it is staged, but it's not forced. There's that very famous picture of George Michael, lying on his side. And we've got Mick Jagger. There's only a handful of color pictures. This is quite interesting. So U2 feature a lot in that documentary, and there's a lot of kind of behind the scenes. There's a wonderful scene where it's Metallica. So he goes into a hotel room with Metallica, and they're deciding on the cover picture of their new album. And he goes into the hotel room. They rock up in their jumpers and things like that. They just do not look like Metallica. And he's there with all of the outtakes and the Polaroids and stuff like that. And they're all like, "Oh, I don't know, my hair looks a little bit in that. I don't, I'm not sure about this." Blah 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 blah. But they're just having a cup of tea and enjoying themselves. So Adam Clayton from U2. So he says, in when he's talking about the photography in general, really, that he thinks is so important for U2's kind of persona and their album covers and everything. And he basically says, we just wouldn't use anybody else. If it's our choice, it's always going to be Anton Corbijn. And then you've got Tom Waits there. It's just. And the one thing I want to make a point about this book, it's really good quality. Print quality is great. They're heavy pages. Vertical images are kind of placed accordingly on the pages. Some of the other Anton Corbijn books that I've got, the print quality hasn't been great, or not the print quality, but the pages, the choice of paper. But this one's spectacular, and I just love it. Look at that.
And actually,
leaving San Francisco for Reno. He's just taking a picture at the back of his car.
And this is a bit of a steal, really, because Abe Books have it at 33, Amazon at 43. You can find stuff at Waterstones for 55. But I mean, if you compare it to some of his other books, like his 1955 book, that's 216 quid. Depeche Mode, you won't get under 100 quid. This seems really good value, actually.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, because I think the reason why it's so big and it's so available is because the pictures in here are not the official iconic pictures that have made album covers and things like that. So they probably don't have as much copyright, resell, I don't know, whatever the words are involved. So it's amazing. I'll just read a little bit of the flyleaf because I think that kind of makes sense. It says, representing the ultimate publication on the music photography of Anton Corbijn, one of the most important photographers and directors working today. This collection of images many never before published, focuses on Corbijn's evolving fascination with the music industry from the 70s to the present day. Anton Corbijn's interest in music has been the engine of an illustrious decades-long career that has most recently involved the making of feature-length films such as The American and Most Wanted Man and Life. Its gloriously illustrated, oversized book pays homage to Corbijn's obsession with rock and roll.
Do you know what? You've convinced me. I've just been clicking Amazon as we've been speaking.
Do it. I love it. Gritty, moody, black and white.
Yeah.
What can you not like?
Brilliant. What's not to like?
What's not to like?
A couple of questions. Actually, this is more of an observation than a question. Hi, Neil. Hi, Kev. Just thought I'd drop you a line. As you were saying in your latest podcast, you were short of questions. Are we short of questions, Kev, now? We could probably do with a few more, couldn't we?
We can always do with more.
Always. So click at fujicast.co.uk for the email ones. Or you can go onto the Facebook page, of course, and join in with the top post that you've got there.
Questions for the show thread.
He says, I don't have a question, but I do have a request. As I usually listen to your podcast while I'm out jogging, could you play a backing track of around 150 to 160 beats per minute? I tell you what, Kev this week took... You took delivery of your studio running machine.
Bought a treadmill.
Yeah. Have you used it yet?
No.
Right.
It's up though.
Yeah.
It's up.
It's a bit like a gym membership. You do have to use it, Kev.
Yeah. No, I will use it. It's only a cheap one, but I can if I go on it twice a week or something like that, I'll be happy.
Yeah, it'll do the job. And then a question from Frederick Hagland. Greetings from Fran, Belgium. In the EU. Oh, don't rub it in. Excellent show. Question. I'm curious to learn about some of your respective photographic aha moments, i.e. a time when a realization or an insight, not necessarily an original one, took your photography 1 or 3 steps further. Examples for me include using spot metering, cutting down on time post-processing, using primes, filling the frame, working with photography projects. I guess it could be anything from strictly photographic techniques and equipment to ways of approaching a subject and seeing things. I think one of my original aha moments, very, very early aha moments, was in aperture priority, using a Canon 5D, and how easy it was to go into exposure compensation and dial down and get that sort of thing. That was one of my technical aha moments. What about you?
Well, my first aha moment was Take On Me. That was great.
Oh God, Kev,
love that.
Oh really?
But yes, I think I do actually physically remember being at a wedding once. I reckon I must have been 3 years in, and using exposure compensation constantly, riding it up, riding it down, looking at the window light and thinking, oh God. And then I did have a light bulb moment and thought, hang on, why don't I position myself so I'm using the light rather than fearing the light? And ever since then, that's been great. And then spot metering came with that, because if you're not shooting fully manual, allowing the camera to help you with the exposure is great. As soon as the electronic viewfinders come along with Fujifilm cameras that I was using, it was brilliant, because I could see the exposure, I could see the highlights, I could see the shadows. And then further on, more recently, I suppose, the last kind of 3 or 4 years, just always shooting everything in black and white. By that I mean in the viewfinder in black and white. So if you're shooting RAW, you still get your color images.
Well, one of yours as well would be the back button focusing, wouldn't it, as well?
Back button focusing, there's been quite a few defining elements of things that have made me think, brilliant.
I think the moment I realised that exposure compensation and always underexposed by a stop and a half, that for me, that was like, I can just crack on now. And away we went. What about artistic moments, though? Any of those sort of artistic sort of aha moments? Did you have any of those? So not tech, but artistic.
Yeah, I'm not so sure, to be honest with you. I've always been pretty, regimented with the style. I suppose if it, when it comes to artistic, then I think that, what I said about using the light rather than working against it, that's not really a technical thing. So perhaps that would be the ball I'd throw into that hole.
For me, it would be it would be 16mm, of course, for Fujifilm now. But for when I started, for me, I suppose it's kind of tech and kind of artistic. It was finding 24mm. That made all the difference to my photography. Suddenly, it forced me to walk into a situation and engage with the subject. And from that moment on, really, a prime. Yeah, I think that was the game changer for me. That was a real game changer.
Yeah. Well, it's all about the living daylights, isn't it?
Is it? Right, okay.
Yeah, I'd say the thing is, it's all about light, isn't it, with them? Living daylights, sun always shines on TV.
Oh, no, Kev.
Yeah.
Oh.
You knew what he was saying?
Right. Have we got time for another question, or is it time for the theme tune? On that note, I think we should do a theme tune, but go on. One more question.
All right, one more.
Sorry, Frederick, for his terrible aha humour.
Oh, what? Oh, great. I used to love them. What was their names? Paul Wakatar, Morton Harkett, and then the other two nobody remembers. Jeff Petrie, he says, it's a little bit, this is related to a question we had earlier. People continuously argue about the need for full frame cameras because they need to make large prints in double hyphenated quotes.
Yeah.
What's the largest print you've made with a Fuji APS-C sensor camera? How did it turn out? And did you love it?
You've made huge prints because that Tokyo exhibition of yours, they were huge.
Yeah, I haven't made them; they did them. But I remember
APS-C sensor. Yeah,
XT1, XT2. I can't remember anyway. But somewhere I went to a thing called CP Plus in Tokyo, in Yokohama.
Right. Yeah,
and they printed some of my pictures, which I'd taken on the original X100. Yeah, so it must have been XT1. I'd printed on the original X100, and the pictures were 7 meters wide. They were humongous.
7 meters?
7 meters wide.
Oof.
And they were from JPEGs, because I was only shooting JPEG. Yeah. And they managed to do that. Now, of course, Fujifilm, they probably have some amazing technology in their labs to be able to do stuff like that. But I've never had any issues with printing A1. Sorry, I did A1 prints from my Fujifilm cameras. Yeah.
So
it's just not a thing.
No.
If you're going full billboard size, then
you're going to use your GFX probably for that, aren't you? Yeah. And well, that's it for another week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our patrons. You'll be bumped to the front, of course, as we as you send your questions in via that now. See you in the Facebook group for any questions you have about today's show. Play nice, of course. We haven't given them a mention of late, so we should give them a nice big mention. Steve and Peter. They're in there just to make sure that everybody behaves themselves. And thank you to our guest, Karah Mew, today. And the amazing book, actually, for once, will not cost you £1 million from Kev. 1, 2, 3, 4 by Anton Corbijn. I'm off to order that straight away. What have you got planned for this week, Kev?
Rugby! Loads of it.
Oh, it's rugby! Oh, no, but by the time this goes out, rugby will have happened. Which means
well, next weekend's rugby as well. Loads of it.
Oh, well, there we go. You're all right then. Are you going to be riding your horse again? No.
I go to the tip. I've got a lot of cardboard to get rid of.
yeah, that's it. That's your week sorted out. If you'd like to send a question in, then do send it to click@fujicast.co.uk, or you can put it in the Facebook group, and we will see you next week. Bye, Kev.
Bye-bye.
The Fujicast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.